For as long as we have looked up at the night sky, one question has echoed: are we alone in the universe? Now, to answer that question, we don't start out in space. We start here with the story of how life began on Earth. Our planet was born from the laws of physics and mathematics. Mountains rose, oceans formed, volcanoes erupted. The stage was being set. And deep in those oceans, from cracks in the sea floor, rock-like structures grew. But these were not just rocks, they're nature's laboratories. Over a very long period of time, the chemical reactions happening in these systems developed into the early building blocks of life. Now, when we look back at this story, we can see that life didn't begin from one single element acting alone. No, life began in the meeting places, where rock met water, where temperature met pressure, where chemistry meets geology. The story of life is really a story of connection, of many elements in relationship working together. And what my research into the origins of life has shown me is that trying to understand that story through a modern scientific lens has confirmed something from my Aboriginal worldview, that existence itself is connected and relational. And how we choose to see that story of life doesn't just shape how we understand our past, it shapes our future. One of the best parts about being human, in my opinion, is our curiosity. And that doesn't just stop with how life developed on our own world, but to what else is out there. And this drives us to explore beyond our own planet. Yet the conversation is shifting. Humanity is preparing not only for discovery, but to colonise. Missions are currently in development that will see bases built on the moon within the next decade. Our neighbouring planet, Mars, is seen as a backup planet for humanity, with talk of mining resources and permanent settlements. The language is familiar. Planting flags, claiming land, extracting resources. It echoes the language of colonisation here on Earth. Now, as a young woman with both Aboriginal and Western heritage, and as an emerging space professional, I live between two ways of knowing. I love space, I really do. I was like every other 5-year-old that wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up. But unlike the other children, I never grew out of that phase. I even wrote about wanting to be an astronaut on my university applications when I was 17. And in fact, I still want to be an astronaut when I grow up. Because the reality is, space inspires us. It's what drew me to STEM as a child, and it's what motivates so many more to stay curious about our world, to innovate, to explore. On the other hand, I carry with me the Indigenous ways of knowing, and it's a worldview that has inextricably linked the meaning of life and the guide to living life. At its heart, it is about connection, community, and country. And walking in these two worlds has made me reflect. Where does exploration end and exploitation begin? An Aboriginal law that has become somewhat of a guiding principle for me is one that is simple but important, and it is that responsibility comes before rights. Now, in a Western worldview, that is often flipped. Rights come first, responsibility follows later. I claim the land and then I'm responsible for it. But in Indigenous cultures, you don't gain the right to anything until you've proven that you can be responsible for it. As an everyday example, what if I claim the right to friendship, but then don't take on the responsibility of showing up and supporting my friend when they need it? What happens? Well, trust is lost. I'm a pretty bad friend, and the right to that friendship is meaningless. Indigenous cultures have survived for tens of thousands of years in some of the harshest environments on Earth. not by seeking to control the environment, but by living in connection with it, responsibility first. Only then did we have the right to use or to inhabit. It's a mindset that has kept culture strong for so many years, and it's a mindset that has a lot to teach us as we step beyond Earth itself into even harsher and less forgiving environments in space. So here's my problem. How do I contribute to space exploration and discovery, something I am very passionate about and very much want to do, while maintaining the values that I hold sacred, particularly when they can feel like they are at such odds? We are debating who has rights to the moon without making its protection our first priority. We are dreaming of settlements on Mars without first taking responsibility for the harm that we continue to do on our own planet, let alone our backup planet. We are acting as though we have rights to space without taking responsibility for its exploration. And what if, in that rush, we do something that we can't take back? What if a rover lands on a new world and in that process disrupts an evolutionary process before it even had the chance to begin? That would make us, the invasive species, the villains in another world story. We know that on Earth it took millions of years for chemistry, geology, physics to weave together the right conditions for our life to emerge. Can you imagine the consequences had another life form been so careless with our own during that vulnerable process? That is the cost of putting rights before responsibility. Because ultimately, when we treat space as just the next frontier to conquer and claim, we risk repeating the same mistakes that define our history here on Earth, of taking too much and leaving harm behind. We're at a critical point. Science and technology is pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And now we face a choice. Why not use this opportunity to embed the principles of our oldest living culture on Earth? What would space exploration look like if we approached it from an Aboriginal worldview, with responsibility first? Now, I want to take this opportunity to introduce a word from the Gundungurra people that captures what I hope will be a key takeaway from this talk. And that word is Nanangula. Nanangula means walking and working together. I see Nanangula as a way we can build a relationship between Aboriginal and Western worldviews so that we can walk and work together for progress. We know that when we have a strong relationship, we feel a stronger sense of responsibility. And when we have a strong sense of responsibility, we are more motivated to innovate and explore ethically and sustainably. So, what if before claiming the right to the moon's resources, we took responsibility for ensuring the preservation of its environment? What if before building colonies on Mars, we took responsibility for preserving its geology, its atmosphere, and its role in the story of our solar system? What if building a relationship between Aboriginal and Western worldviews became a way to reimagine existence itself as connected, as sustainable, as relational? Only then would the right to use, to inhabit, to explore actually mean anything at all. Now, I'm not saying that any of this is easy. Please don't mistake that. But let's also keep in mind that space isn't known for being easy. Space is known for shifting the way that we see our world, shifting what we believe is possible, from big questions like, are we alone in the universe, to pesky everyday ones like, can I get away with hitting snooze on my alarm just one more time? The extra 5 minutes means a lot. Because the reality is, when we explore not just space, but our everyday lives with humility, with responsibility, with Nanangula, that is when we can prevent exploration from becoming exploitation. So, let's imagine a future where humanity's next step beyond Earth wasn't marked by a claim of ownership, but by a promise of care. Where we had earned the right to walk on new worlds by proving that we could be responsible for them. Where the guiding principle wasn't conquest, but Nanangula. That is what Aboriginal law has to teach us, that progress starts and ends with relationship. So next time you are looking up at the night sky and wondering, are we alone in the universe? Remember, it's not just the answer that matters. It's how we walk together to find it. Thank you.